May 30th, 1911. Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Speeds above 75 miles per hour. Dust, roaring engines, scorching asphalt, and 40 cars pushing hard on a single oval track. And in the middle of all that, one driver stood out from the rest. Every single racing car on that track carried two people, a driver and a riding mechanic. Because that mechanic wasn't just there to fix things, he did something else entirely. Something no driver today would ever think of. And it's exactly what led this one man across the finish line in first place. So what was different about his car? His name was Ray Wade Haroon. He was born on January 12th, 1879, in the small town of Spartansburg, Pennsylvania. From a young age, he was more of an engineer than a student. He dropped out of school early, but by the time he was 20, he understood machinery the way others spent years trying to learn. His colleagues nicknamed him the Little Professor, not because of his size, but because of the way he thought in systems when everyone else was running on instinct. In the world of early 20th century racing, Haroon was a well-known name. He drove for the American team Marmon, based in Indianapolis, a company that used racing as the ultimate proof of their car's reliability. Haroon designed the machines, stripped them down after every race, and rebuilt them from scratch. Speed was his work and his obsession. But no one back then could have imagined that speed might depend not just on wheels and an engine, but on one small, almost invisible detail. The kind of detail that made people laugh the first time they saw it. To understand the problem Ray Haroon solved, you first need to understand what a race actually looked like back then. The rules in 1911 required two people in every car, a driver and a riding mechanic. The mechanic sat right next to the driver in an open cockpit. No roof, no real protection, exposed to wind and dust at full speed. His job was twofold. While the driver looked forward, the mechanic looked backward and to the sides, communicating through gestures and shouts over the roar of the engine, and if something broke, he tried to fix it on the move. The mechanic was the driver's living eyes and living hands at the same time. In other words, the mechanic was the rearview mirror. But living eyes came at a cost. A second person meant weight, 70, 80, sometimes 90 kilograms that the engine had to carry for the entire race. On a short distance, that's barely noticeable, but Haroon was preparing for 500 miles, 7 hours of racing, over 1,000 miles around the same oval in relentless vibration, heat, and dust. Over that kind of distance, extra weight becomes lost seconds, a lot of lost seconds. Haroon made a decision. He would race alone, no mechanic, but there was a question he couldn't ignore. How would he see what was happening behind him? And that's exactly when something came back to him, something he had seen 7 years earlier and never quite forgotten. It was 1904. Haroon was working as a personal chauffeur for William Thorne, president of Montgomery Ward, one of the largest retail companies in America, based in Chicago. Every day he drove his employer through the city streets. One afternoon, while waiting at the curb, his eye caught something on a horse-drawn carriage nearby. An ordinary scene from the early 1900s. A horse, a coach, a driver up on the box seat. But this driver had a small mirror mounted on a post beside him, angled so he could see his passengers in the back without turning around. Haroon stopped. He stared for a few seconds. The idea was so simple it almost felt embarrassing to call it an idea. A small piece of glass in a frame, the right angle, and you can see what's behind you while still looking forward. Now, you might think, that's it. That's how the rear-view mirror was born. But not quite. Haroon didn't think about it that way at all, because he already had something for that. A mechanic, a second person in the car. That mechanic wasn't just a part of the machine. He was a living, intelligent rear-view mirror, one who could tell you far more than just what was happening behind you. So Haroon simply filed it away as a curious little thing, the way most people do. And it stayed there, somewhere in the back of his mind, for a long time. From 1905 to 1910, Haroon raced like everyone else, with a mechanic beside him by the rules. In 1910, he won 45 out of 60 races and became the national racing champion of the United States. But at the end of that same year, he told his team the race in Indianapolis would be his last. He was done, and he only wanted to go out one way, with a win. To make that happen, he designed a car that had never existed before. Single seat, lightweight, streamlined, nothing unnecessary. And the first thing he removed was the second seat. No mechanic, just the driver and the machine. That car became something unlike anything else on the grid. His teammates called it the Wasp, for its sharp-pointed tail and yellow body with black stripes. At that point, Haroon wasn't thinking about a mirror at all. He was thinking about weight, about speed, about 7 hours of racing where every extra kilogram meant lost seconds. The car was spotted during practice runs, days before the race. Other drivers went to the race officials and demanded his disqualification. Their argument was straightforward. Without a mechanic, Haroon physically cannot see what's happening behind him. At speeds over 60 miles an hour, that's a danger to everyone on the track, not just him. The officials called Haroon in. They wanted an explanation, and it was right there, under pressure, with a real threat of being thrown out before the race even started, that a scene from 7 years ago came flashing back. Chicago, 1904. A horse-drawn carriage at the curb, a driver on the box seat, and a small mirror on a post, angled to see the passengers behind without turning around. Haroon didn't waste time on long explanations. He went to the garage, grabbed a small mirror, built a bracket for it, and bolted it right above the steering column. No patents, no optical calculations, just a mirror at the right angle, put together in the final hours before the start. He went back to the officials, showed them, explained. The officials talked it over. The protesters had no more arguments. Haroon was cleared to race. The mirror saved his spot on the starting grid, not the race itself. He sat down in the car, found the angle, looked forward, and in the mirror, the road behind him appeared. It worked, at least in the parking lot. 1911. More than 85,000 fans in the stands. 40 cars lined up on the grid. 2 people in each one, driver and mechanic. Journalists were making their rounds through every garage. And then they reached car number 32. There was only one person inside and something strange mounted on top of the body. Haroon sat alone in his yellow Wasp, looking less like a racing driver and more like a test pilot strapped into a rocket on wheels. The race began. Until that day, every corner had come with a voice beside him. Clear on the left, car on the right, someone closing from behind. Now there was no one to shout. Inside the cockpit, only him, the roar of the engine, and a small rectangle of glass in front of his eyes. The mirror vibrated with the car. The Indianapolis track in 1911 was paved with bricks, and the vibration was so severe that the reflection constantly shook and blurred. Haroon later admitted the mirror barely worked the way he had planned, but he was winning anyway, not because of the mirror, but because without a mechanic, his car was lighter and more fuel efficient than his rivals over the long haul. The mirror wasn't what won the race. It was what got him to the starting line without being disqualified. Somewhere around the midpoint, Haroon moved into first place. Part 9, the finish. 6 hours, 42 minutes, and 8 seconds. Average speed, nearly 75 miles per hour. First place, prize money, $14,250. But while Haroon was collecting his winnings, everyone was staring at the mirror. Journalists wrote about it. Engineers from other teams sketched out the bracket. Photographers moved in for close-ups. In a single day, a small piece of glass on a racing car became the most talked about innovation in motorsport. But the day had a bitter ending. The Wasp was banned from further competition immediately after the race. Its single-seat body violated the existing rules. Haroon never returned to the track as a driver. He won the only race he ran that day. And after crossing the finish line, his car passed into history, literally. What came next, though? No one expected. Part 11. In 1912, just 1 year after Haroon's win, Indianapolis officials made the riding mechanic mandatory for all races longer than 100 miles. Instead of following Haroon's lead, the rules went in the exact opposite direction. Why? Pressure from other teams? Safety concerns. Without a second person, there was no one to help a driver deal with a breakdown on the track. And even though the mirror had already proven its value, trust in it as a replacement for a living human being was still too thin. The debate went on for decades. In 1923, the mechanic was removed. In the 1930s, he was brought back by force. It wasn't until 1938 that officials finally made him optional, after which no team ever voluntarily put a second person in the car again. The mechanic was officially struck from the rule book in 1964, 53 years, after Ray Haroon first showed up to the starting grid alone. In 1914, an American named Elmer Berger from Brooklyn, received the first official patent for a mirror device designed specifically to eliminate blind spots for drivers. In 1921, he brought it to the commercial market under the name the Cop Spotter, a device for drivers who wanted to see police cars coming before the police saw them. Manufacturers picked up the idea. First, the mirror appeared as an option on expensive cars, then as standard equipment. Then laws in countries around the world began requiring it in every vehicle on the road. Today, the rearview mirror is the root of an entire tree of technologies. First came side mirrors, then the backup camera, which is now legally required in many countries. Then blind spot monitoring systems that detect vehicles in places the mirror can't reach. Then rear cross traffic alerts. Today, artificial intelligence is taking the next step. Cameras placed around the car feed a real-time algorithm that builds a three-dimensional picture of the space around the vehicle and identifies threats before the driver even thinks to check a mirror. All of it grew from a single root, from an idea that a man in a leather helmet bolted above his steering wheel because he needed to see what others couldn't. Haroon wasn't thinking about the future. He was solving a specific problem. Extra weight in the car, a blind spot behind him. One solution for two problems. But that's exactly how the inventions that change everything tend to work. Someone gets pushed into a corner and removes one specific limitation, and the world after that is never quite the same as it was before.